Hi friends, this is Miss G. We have to get started on our new lesson today, Tuesday's lesson. And first is, of course, our cards, our sight words, all right? Get ready. Remember to echo Miss G. H-A-D, had. Good. Now, like we're supposed to do, you think of a sentence with the word had, and Miss G wrote some down too. Okay? Here we go. Nicholas had a snack. So think about that. Nicholas had a snack. That means he didn't have a snack right now. He had a snack in the past. Maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was earlier, but Nicholas had a snack means he didn't have one now, right? Christabella had lots of toys. So Christabella had toys. She doesn't have them right now. Maybe she's doing school. Maybe she's doing something else. She's outside. So she might not have the toys with her right now. That's why we say the word had. Remember, there's a D at the end. Angel said he had lunch. Again, had lunch means he didn't have lunch right now. He ate it before, okay? In the past. So this is a great word to use because we're learning about the past. Now, my friends, we are on to a new story. So, just to keep in mind, I know some of you might be writing your paper still, and that's okay. If you're ever not sure what to do, go back to the last lesson and check it out. Today's lesson, you're just listening and trying to answer at home, okay? That's all you have to do today. So, our new story is called The Little House. Miss G loves this book, all right? And you'll see why. We have to read it a few times like we do every story, just so we can understand what's happening. Because a lot of things happen in this story, okay? So today we're just going to notice, and I want you guys noticing the characters and the setting. And you might be like, what is the character and setting? I forgot. Well, Miss G's going to give you a little reminder.
The story, the characters are. Who is in the story? The characters are. Who is in the story? The setting is when and where it takes place. The setting is when and where it takes place.
So there we go, friends. Who can tell me what does character mean? What does character mean? It means who's in the story, right? And what does setting mean? We just heard it in our song. When and where it takes place. So also what season it's in, what's around the surroundings, if it's in the city or in the forest, those are settings, okay? Thinking about this while Miss G reads it. I want you to really see the illustrations. So I'll actually be reading it to you this way, okay? The story is called The Little House, and it's by Virginia Lee Burton, okay? Now, it also says in these little words here, her story. And we'll talk about that later. But just looking at the cover, what do you think this story is about? We're looking at the title and the illustration. Why do you say that? Why do you think the story will be that way? So Miss G thinks the story is going to be about a little house. And I think it's going to be about a red house because that's what I see on the illustration. Okay, so remember illustration's picture. You're listening to the words, and I want you looking for the characters in the story and the setting in the story. Here we go. Once upon a time, there was a little house way out in the country. She was a pretty little house, and she was strong and well built. The man who built her so well said, "This little house shall never be sold for gold or silver, and she will live to see our great-great-grandchildren's great-great-grandchildren's living in her." The little house was very happy. As she sat on the hill and watched the countryside around her, she watched the sun rise in the morning and she watched the sun set in the evening. Day followed day, each one a little different from the one before, but the little house stayed just the same. Ooh, it's nighttime. Look at that. In the nights, she watched the moon grow from a thin new moon to a full moon, then back again to a thin old moon. And when there was no moon, she watched the stars. Way off in the distance, she could see the lights of the city. The little house was curious about the city and wondered what it would be like to live there. So these are the lights of the city. Time passed quickly for the little house as she watched the countryside slowly change in the seasons. In the spring, when the days grew longer, the sun warmer, she waited for the first robin to return from the south. She watched the grass turn green, she watched the buds on the trees swell, and the apple trees burst into blossom. She watched the children playing in the brook. In the long summer days, she sat in the sun and watched the trees cover themselves with leaves and the white daisies cover the hill. She watched the gardens grow and she watched the apples ripen and turn red. She watched the children swimming in the pool. Oof, oof, oof. In the fall, notice how the colors are changing. When the days grew shorter and the nights colder, she watched the first frost turn the leaves to bright yellow, orange, and red. She watched the harvest gathered and the apples picked. She watched the children going back to school. And there goes those apples. In the winter, when the nights were long and the days were short, and the countryside covered with snow, she watched the children coasting and skating. Year followed year, the apple trees grew old and the new ones were planted. The children grew up and went away to the city. And now the night of the lights of the city seemed brighter. One day the little house was surprised to see a horseless carriage coming down the winding road. Pretty soon there were more of them on the road and fewer carriages pulled by horses. Pretty soon along came some surveyors and surveyed a line in front of the little house. Pretty soon along came a steam shovel and dug a road through the hill covered with daisies. Then some trucks came and dumped big stones on the road, and then some trucks with little stones, then some trucks with tar and sand. And finally, a steamroller came and rolled it all smooth, and the road was done. Now the little house watched the trucks and the automobiles going back and forth to the city. Gasoline stations, roadside stands, and small houses followed the new road. Everyone and everything moved much faster than before. We're thinking about the characters and the settings in our story. More roads were made, and the countryside was divided into lots. More houses and bigger houses, apartment houses and tenant houses, schools and stores and garages spread over the land and crowded all around the little house. No one wanted to live in her and take care of her anymore. She couldn't be sold for gold or silver, so she just stayed and watched. So look at all the changes happening around her. Now, it was not so quiet and peaceful at night. Now, the lights of the city were bright and very close, and the street lights shone all night. This must be living in the city, thought the little house, and didn't know whether she liked it or not. She missed the fields of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. Pretty soon, there were trolley cars going back and forth, and in front of the little house, they went back and forth all day and part of the night. Everyone seemed to be very busy, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. Pretty soon, there was an elevated train going back and forth above the little house. The air was filled with dust and smoke, and the noise was so loud that it shook the little house. Now she couldn't tell when spring came, or summer, or fall, or winter. It seemed all about the same. So, if you guys remember, what are some different things you would see if it were winter? Snow. Maybe people dress warmly, like more layers. But she can't tell the difference anymore because it's not happening. She's not seeing it. Pretty soon, there was a subway going back and forth underneath the little house. Oh, here we go. But she couldn't feel and hear it. People were moving faster and faster. No one noticed the little house anymore. They hurried by without a glance. Pretty soon, they tore down the apartment houses and tenant houses around the little house and started digging bigger cellars, one on each side. The steam shovel dug down 3 stories on one side and 4 stories on the other. Pretty soon, they started building up. They built up 25 stories on one side and 35 stories on the other. So what's happening to the buildings? They're getting much bigger, right? Now the little house only saw the sun at noon and didn't see the moon or stars at night at all. Because the lights of the city were so bright, she didn't like living in the city. She, at night, used to dream of the country and the field of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. The little house was very sad and lonely. Her paint was cracked and dirty. Her windows were broken and her shutters hung crookedly. She looked shabby, though she was just as good a house as ever underneath. Then came one fine morning in spring. Along came the great-great-granddaughter of the man who built the little house so well. She saw the shabby little house, but she didn't hurry by. There was something about the little house that made her stop and look. She said to her husband, "That little house looks like the little house my grandmother lived in when she was a little girl. Only that little house was away out in the country, on a hill covered with daisies and apple trees around." That house looks familiar, but it was in the field. Then they found out it was the very same house. So they went to the movers to see if the little house could be moved. The movers looked the little house over and said, "Sure, this house is as good as ever. She's built so well she could move her anywhere." So they jacked up the little house, put her on wheels. Traffic was held up for hours as they slowly moved her out of the city. Look at all the people now. So you can see the road from the city. At first, the little house was frightened, but after she got used to it, she rather liked it. They rolled along the big road and they rolled along the little roads until they were way out in the country. When the little house saw the green grass and heard the birds singing, she didn't feel sad anymore. They went along and along, but they couldn't seem to find just the right place. They tried the little house here and they tried the little house there. Finally, they saw a little hill in the middle of the field and apple trees growing around it. There, said the great-great-granddaughter, that's just the place. Yes, it is, said the little house to her relief. A cellar was dug on top of the hill, and slowly they moved the house from the road to the hill. The windows and shutters were fixed, and once again they painted her a lovely shade of pink. As the little house settled down on her new foundation, she smiled happily. Once again she could watch the sun and moon and stars. Once again she could watch spring and summer and fall and winter come and go. Once again she was lived in and taken care of. Never again would she be curious about the city. Never again would she want to live there. The stars twinkled above her. A new moon was coming up. It was spring, and all was quiet and peaceful in the country. The end. So this, my friends, is one of Miss G's favorite books. And my question to you is, who are the characters in the story? Thinking about all the different things that happen. The characters are what? Who's in the story, right? So who were in the story? There was a great-great-great-grandfather, right? In the beginning of our story, who built the house. And they show him right here. Who's another character? You're probably screaming out one, but I'm going to save that one for the end because that one's obvious. Who's another character? Remember, characters are really about who we were talking about in the story. So there's a lot of different people mentioned, but they weren't really talking in our story. They weren't really important. So we're thinking about the characters that are really important to our story. Well, there's also the great-great-great-granddaughter. Here she is right here. She was a character in our story because she talked and she said, I see that house and I know it. Now, my friends, who is the main character? The main character is who the story is mostly about. The one most important character in our story. Ding, ding, ding. The little house. So can characters be animals? Yes. The 3 little pigs, they were characters. The 3 billy goats. Can characters be people? Yes. Because when I was young in the mountains, those were our characters and those were people. Can they be things, characters? Ding, ding, ding. Yes, they can. This is a thing and it's the main character in our story. What about the settings? Where and when it takes place? I'll quickly skim through it so you can see. What do you say? It changed, right? It changed throughout the entire story. So she was where in the beginning? Looking at all the grass and stuff. She was like in a forest, right? In the country. Then by the end of our story, where was she? Looking at all the buildings. This kind of reminds us of where we live. She was in the city. Also, thinking about the beginning of our story, there was changes in when it took place. Okay? And we know that by looking at the illustrations and listening to the words. We can see and went through all the different seasons. Good job, my friends. So, we got character, We got setting. We did a lot of notice. Tomorrow we'll do our wonders, maybe with some special guests. Super exciting. I miss you guys. I love you guys. Have a great day. But let's figure out our shout outs. I didn't forget. Dun dun dun. All right, real quick, our shout outs for today. We have Marquise. Yay, Marquise. He did the Cynthia paper. He said, I like to play in the pool. Cynthia got a water from water pump. Cynthia got water from a water pump. And we can see me. He has money in his pool, which is great. His dad is there. Love it, Marquise. Love the details. Next up, we have Ari. So Ari actually sent me the paper we did yesterday. You didn't have to finish it. You had today too. But I love that she finished it so fast. And look how well she was writing her words. She was following the lines. Good job. She wrote, school has changed. Long ago, kids walked to school. Now kids take buses. Beautiful. So, last but not least, our last friend is Conscience. Conscience wrote, school has changed. Long ago, kids were different ages in a class. I know it's flipped over. Sorry, Conscious, but it was a little hard to get it this way. Now kids are the same age in a class. That is how school has changed. Look at that. He had to take 3 papers to write it, which is okay. Good job, Conscious. I love that you picked that topic because it's different from what Miss G did. And that's all Miss G wanted. All right, friends, we're really done this time. Have a good day. See you Wednesday. Bye.